Hi, Maria. Jake?
I'm here.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl?
Yes, I'm back.
Hi, Cheryl. Indira? Don't see Indira yet. Jose? See you there. Welcome back. Ricardo? Welcome back, Ricardo. Nicole?
Here.
I'm here.
Hi, Nicole. Debbie? There you are. Hi, Debbie. And
I'm here.
Jason's
Yep.
back. Hi, Jason. Just confirming if Indira will be...
I'm here. I was just
Oh,
switched
there
from
you are.
attendee.
Got it. Okay. Hi, Indira. Okay, we are all here, Your Honor. It's back to you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Do we have Mr. Toombs on the line as well as his counsel and Ms.
Yes, Your Honor.
Jarvis?
Sorry, yes, Your Honor, we are here.
All right, very good. And Ms. Jarvis, are you with us?
I am.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and go on the record. So we are on the record before the California State Board of Pharmacy, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Donald Frank Toombs, the last name spelled Toombs. It's agency case number 5827, OAH number 2022030347. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings and have been assigned to preside over this matter with the board. To establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Mr. President?
I'm here, Your Honor.
Thank you. Madam Vice President?
Present.
Mr. Patel?
Present.
Ms. Butler?
Here.
Ms. Cameron Banks?
Present.
Mr. De La Paz? Oh, there we go. Mr. De La Paz, I did not hear your response if you responded. I saw you unmute, but still did not hear anything. So Mr. De La Paz, it looks like you're unmuting, but we cannot hear you.
This is Moderator. Board Member De La Paz, you might need to try calling in for your audio. So you would just need to go to audio and video at the top of your screen and select connecting by phone.
And so I'll come back to Mr. De La Paz. Mr. Sanchez?
Here, present.
Dr. Tebow?
Present, thank you.
Ms. Veal?
Present.
Mr. Wise?
I'm here, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Your Honor, this is Eileen Smiley, but I am not seeing Member Veal's camera on.
Okay, thank you. Do you see her now?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And Judge, this is Jose De La Paz. Can you hear me now?
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let the record reflect that a quorum is present. Next, if I may take the appearance of counsel, starting with the Deputy Attorney General, please.
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honor. I am Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis, and I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California. My role is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest.
Good afternoon. And counsel for Mr. Toombs.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Nick Petrullo with Rosenberg, Spall, and Zygan, and I have the pleasure of representing Mr. Donald Toombs.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Petrullo, are you familiar with kind of the procedural format with these hearings?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. I don't want to insult you by explaining it if you know it, but on the other hand, I didn't want to not explain something if you weren't real familiar. So I'll just err on the side of caution. As you may have seen in the previous one, we'll start with Ms. Jarvis giving a summary of the matter and the prior discipline. She'll introduce the petition documents, and then we'll turn it over to you to present the evidence that you would like to present. And Ms. Jarvis will have a chance to ask questions on cross. And then, of course, if you have any redirect, it's that back and forth that is standard in proceedings. And then once the parties are done, I'll solicit questions from the board. And then once we finish with all the evidence, we'll take closing arguments. And then the matter will be submitted, and the board will adjourn to closed session after hearing all the petitions today and reach a decision in closed session. So a decision will not be issued today, but later in the future by mail. And one thing I'd like to point out is Ms. Jarvis will go over the history of discipline to give context, but what the board is most focused on and interested in is hearing about any rehabilitation Mr. Toombs has engaged in since the discipline. And just so I know how many witnesses we have, did you have anyone you wanted to call other than Mr. Toombs?
It will just be Mr. Toombs, Your Honor.
Okay, and did you have any additional documents other than what Ms. Jarvis intends to offer?
I believe everything is included there, which is the original petition packet in addition to a supplement, which was provided well in advance of the hearing. I believe she has that as well.
Very good. And I just recognize that might have been a premature question because she hasn't introduced her documents yet. So after she introduces her documents, if there are some that you believe are missing, certainly please let me know.
Understood. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. So Ms. Jarvis, your summary statement or documents, whichever you prefer first.
Thank you, Your Honor. And again, I will start with the summary and then proceed into identifying Exhibit 1. So this matter arose via an accusation against petitioner's pharmacist license. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement with the board whereby his license was revoked, the revocation was stayed, and his license was placed on probation for a 5-year period. The board adopted the stipulation, which became effective on February 15th, 2018. Petitioner has therefore served more than 4 years of probation and is eligible to petition for early termination. The causes for discipline were that on or about March 16, 2016, petitioner was convicted of driving while under the influence of alcohol. The specific causes for discipline were that he had a criminal conviction substantially related to the practice of pharmacy, and then the dangerous use of alcohol. In aggravation, petitioner has a prior disciplinary history in that in 2005, petitioner diverted Demerol from the pharmacy where he worked for his own personal use. He was placed on probation in 2007 for a 5-year probation term, which he successfully completed. With his petition, petitioner provided a personal statement where he states that he has come to understand that he is an alcoholic, and the only way forward has been to immerse himself in recovery. He has practiced at the same hospital pharmacy position in good standing for 14 years. He has completed an intensive outpatient treatment program as well as an aftercare program. Petitioner works the 12 steps, has a sponsor, has built a sober community, and is the secretary for a weekly AA meeting. In addition, Petitioner provided annual employment evaluations back to approximately 2018, since they're annual, that reaches back to 2017, in all of which they are stated that he meets or exceeds expectations while handling a very challenging shift and training new pharmacists and staff. There is also a sheet regarding the cost of drug testing, proof of completion of the intensive outpatient treatment, a certificate of completion of a structured course of alcohol and drug education, and his Maximus treatment reports. That's the PRP, Pharmacist Recovery Program, Maximus. So Exhibit 1 is the petition packet consisting of these documents, plus the notice of hearing and the agreement to electronic recording, as well as a memorandum to the board summarizing this matter. At this time, I would move to admit Exhibit 1.
All right, those documents will be marked collectively as Exhibit 1. Mr. Petrullo, any objection to 1 for all purposes?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, 1 is so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then Exhibit 2 consists of 6 letters of recommendation for petitioner. All 6 were able to be verified by board staff. Several letters are from other members of petitioner's AA meetings who state that petitioner is a good example of recovery and the work it entails. Another is from a physician, also in recovery, who states that petitioner is honest, forthright, has integrity, and is a hard worker committed to sobriety and the profession of pharmacy. Petitioner's supervisor at the hospital states that petitioner has had no disciplinary actions, holds himself to high standards, and is competent, responsible, and professional. The pharmacy supervisor, who appears a little bit more out of touch with petitioner's day-to-day activities, states merely that petitioner is competent and has had no disciplinary actions or issues. Petitioner's therapist states that petitioner has good coping, insight, and judgment skills. And petitioner's Maximus Recovery Peer Support Group Facilitator supports petitioner's petition, stating that petitioner has been 100% compliant with the program and has improved himself, his self-esteem, and his sense of well-being through the program. Petitioner provided 55 hours of continuing education certificates, proof of completion of the ethics course required by the probation terms, a copy of the 2007 decision and order, and a letter from the board acknowledging successful completion of probation on October 4th of 2012. There is also a copy of petitioner's payments to cost recovery, which is paid in full. Additionally, there is a copy of the DUI investigation, a letter from petitioner's criminal attorney regarding his no contest plea to the DUI, and then an order of dismissal for the DUI pursuant to Penal Code Section 1203.4. At this time, I'd like to move the documents just identified as Exhibit 2.
All right, the documents so identified will be marked collectively as Exhibit 2. Mr. Petrillo, any objection to 2 for all purposes?
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. 2 is so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Exhibit 3 is the underlying decision and order, which I would like to move.
Those documents will be marked collectively as 3. Mr. Petrillo, any objection to 3 for all purposes?
No objection.
3 is so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, at this time, petitioner has been 100% in compliance with his probation terms. However, it is the recommendation of his Maximus clinical case manager that he would benefit from completing the Maximus program. At this time, I will cede the floor to petitioner.
Thank you. Mr. Petrillo, did Ms. Jarvis cover all the documents you wanted to have marked and admitted?
I believe so, Your Honor. I just wanted to clarify with respect to the supplement, and maybe Ms. Jarvis could clarify whether that was included in one of those exhibits and whether I just missed that.
What are you referring to as the supplement?
It was at the time of submission of the petition, there was about maybe 8 to 10 months that went by. So a supplement was included with the original petition and was submitted, which had additional evaluations from medical treatment providers, as well as quarterly reviews. and those were submitted and received by the board. So those were the ones that I wanted to see because they address the time frame from the submission of the initial petition to now.
By quarterly reviews, do you mean like the quarterly reports that petitioner files or his supervisor?
Yes.
I do not believe I have those, Your Honor. I have the evaluations, which go, as I said, from 2017, and then I'm looking for the other date.
I believe, Your Honor, we were informed via email that they would be provided in the petition packets for the board members. So I'm not sure if that is the case or not. I know that I have a copy, but obviously I can't confirm whether it was included in their packet.
I don't believe I see them in my packet, which I think is comes from Ms. Jarvis.
It does, Your Honor. Yeah.
Mr. President, can you tell whether you have those documents in your packet?
I'm going to refer this to our counsel, Eileen, and I don't want to give any wrong information. We have a lot of materials given to us.
Okay.
It's organized in a little bit different fashion than how it's presented during Dag Jarvis's opening.
I'm trying to go through the package, Your Honor, to see whether that was sent to the board members.
So the last performance report I have does say it's for a time period ending in, I think, June of 2021. So that would seem to be the most recent performance evaluation.
I can tell you for certain that there have been a few additional treatment provider reports from the end of 2021, as well as an additional declaration that was dated February 4th, 2022. And these would have been in the supplement that was provided a few months back.
Okay, I was just informed by the individual at the board who provides these packets to both me and to the board that that supplemental information is in here. What she did was separate it by classification to each. So she would put the treatment providers report with the treatment providers, the performance evaluation with the performance evaluation. And I do have that declaration that you just referenced. And that is in Exhibit 2. I'm scrolling down to get the exact PDF page. That's the one by Rose Safran, psychotherapist.
Yes.
Dated February 4th, 2022. Okay, so that's PDF pages, it looks like 9 and 10 on Exhibit 2, Your Honor. The way I submitted it to the court, I submitted 2 packets. There was Part 1, which included all of Exhibit 1, and then Part 2, which was Exhibits 2 and 3. So this is part of Part 2, Exhibit 2, pages 9 and 10. So yes, we do have all of the supplemental information that was provided.
Yes, and I can confirm that's in my packet as well.
Your Honor, so it sounds like those documents are encompassed in one of either Exhibits 1 or 2, and if that's the case, then that's fine.
Very good. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Petrullo, if you'd like to call your first witness.
If it's okay, Your Honor, I'd like to give a brief statement on behalf of Mr. Toombs and then followed by a few questions of him after that, if that's all right.
So you wanted to do a statement on his behalf?
Yeah, just an opening statement and then followed by some questioning regarding his rehabilitation and treatment.
Very good. Just as long as you understand your opening, of course, is not evidence.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Your Honor. Mr. Toombs is seeking to terminate a 5-year probation, including termination of the requirement that he complete the Maximus program, which he is currently scheduled to finish at the end of this year. The 5-year probation term was stipulated to and became effective on January 16, 2018, and that's just over 4 years ago. However, the most significant date for the purpose of this hearing is April 28, 2017, as this marks the last time that Mr. Toombs ever consumed alcohol. And that's just under 5 years ago today, and this is a date that changed his life forever. This is also the time that Mr. Toombs, as he will tell you, came to terms with his addiction and embarked upon a path to a life of recovery. Mr. Toombs' probation stemmed from a 2015 DUI conviction, and since that time, he has successfully completed all requirements of his criminal probation, and the matter was formally granted dismissal in November of 2020. Following his DUI conviction, Mr. Toombs successfully completed an outpatient treatment program consisting of 54 sessions, full staff approvals, and all negative toxicology testing. Importantly, this was completed prior to the effective date of his current 5-year probation term with the Pharmacy Board. Mr. Toombs has also been compliant with all terms required by the board, which include the following: successful completion of an aftercare program for alcohol and drug treatment in August of 2018, and that was done at the request of the Maximus program. Successful participation in the Maximus program from March of 2018 to present, mind you, with all negative drug and alcohol tests, quarterly psychiatric evaluations, as well as individualized therapy sessions. He has also completed the board-required IMQ Ethics and Professionalism program. He has regularly attended Peer Support Group Health Professionalism program, and that was from March of 2018 to December of 2021. And he has taken a total of 100, actually more than 195 random tests for drug and alcohol over the course of the last 5 years, all of which have been negative. Mr. Toombs has also undertaken a number of voluntary activities. He attends AA meetings and has regularly attended them from April of 2017 to present. He is also an active member in the South Bay Alano Club, where he serves as a secretary to help others in their recovery process. What is clear is that Mr. Toombs' rehabilitation efforts have been undertaken with the utmost honesty, integrity, and dedication, resulting in the comprehensive petition before you. Mr. Toombs could have only accomplished this by acceptance of his condition, full responsibility for his actions, and with a steadfast commitment to sobriety, not only for himself, but for his family and the public he serves. In addition to the extensive rehabilitation efforts, Mr. Toombs' attitude towards his past actions and his commitment to ongoing treatment and sobriety are clearly reflected in the reviews, evaluations, and letters of his employers, treatment providers, and colleagues. He has met or exceeded expectations on all employment reviews conducted following the offense and through present. His fellow South Bay Alano Club members, Mr. Goodman, Mr. Thomas, and Dr. Packer, describe him as a model of hard work, dedication, and integrity. The Maximus Recovery Peer Support Facilitator describes him as 100% compliant with all testing protocols, enthusiastic towards all aspects of his recovery, committed to sobriety, and committed to improving his relationships. Most importantly, Mr. Toombs' current employer, who he has worked with for 15 years, states that at all times, Mr. Toombs has performed in a competent, responsible, and professional manner. Her letter also provides her support with respect to this petition, and if his fellow pharmacists, colleagues, and treatment providers have his full confidence, so too should the board. I'd also like to point out that in the verification that was submitted when all of the individuals were contacted, Catherine Hirakawa, who is a licensed pharmacist and the director of pharmacy, had this to say in addition. She added that petitioner is very hard and dedicated worker, and that the author relies heavily on petitioner for training. Petitioner is the main trainer for pharmacists due to his attention to detail, and the author believes that petitioner has definitively complied with the requirements during his ordeal. She also describes him as honest, truthful, and forthcoming about it. In summary, Mr. Toombs is a clear picture of someone who has been committed to sobriety and someone who checks all the boxes for the board's criteria for modification of a penalty, and he is certainly worthy of the board granting this petition. And with that, Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. Toombs to ask him a few questions.
Mr. Toombs, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You may put your hand down. If I could have you start by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
Donald Frank Toombs, D-O-N-A-L-D, Frank, F-R-A-N-K, Toombs, T-O-O-M-B-S.
Thank you. Mr. Petrullo, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Toombs, was an accusation filed against you by the Pharmacy Board in 2006?
Yes, it was. I diverted controlled substances from my workplace in 2005. A complaint was filed with the board by my employer, and I was visited by a pharmacy board inspector who suggested that I join the Pharmacist Recovery Program. I followed that board inspector's advice, and I voluntarily enrolled in the PRP. After that, the board brought formal charges against me. I was placed on 5 years of probation. Then in July of 2009, I successfully completed the PRP program. And in October of 2012, I completed all the requirements and successfully completed all terms of my probation. I've taken that experience very, very seriously, and the issue of drug abuse has never been repeated. As has been mentioned, I've worked at my current hospital pharmacist position with access to controlled substances for the last 15 years with not any issues or instances regarding controlled substances whatsoever. Although I've had no problems at work, I did begin slowly drinking on my own time. And this ended up with getting arrested for DUI in 2015. I did try and quit for the next year or two on my own after that. And that, because it was not successful quitting on my own, that pretty much defines what it is to be an alcoholic. And what it means to be in recovery is when you reach out for help. I did that in April of 2017. I reached out by enrolling myself in an intensive outpatient treatment program. And that was the beginning of the successful recovery that I enjoy today.
And Mr. Toombs, can you please describe the steps that you've taken in your rehabilitation, specifically over the last 5 years? And I'd like to just have you discuss those briefly.
Well, as I mentioned, the intensive outpatient treatment program, aftercare program. I've attended 4 to 5 AA meetings per week. I have a home group. South Bay Alana Club is a place that provides a tremendous amount of sobriety.
And please describe your functions in that group.
Okay. Well, I have been elected the secretary for a meeting. Unfortunately, with COVID restrictions, we can't meet in person, but that is hopefully going to be reinstated very soon. But as a secretary, it really gives me an opportunity for my own sobriety, but to give back. We have a lot of newcomers come in, and I spend a lot of time, in the meetings working with people who are helping people with other people with their sobriety.
And is that an activity that's voluntary in nature?
Of course it is.
And is that an activity that you intend to continue participating in?
Yes, I do.
All right. And has your recovery differed over the last 5 years, kind of what you just described, from the recovery that you described back in 2006 and 2007?
Yes, it has.
Please explain.
Yeah. Well, the first step is step 1, which is to surrender. And what surrender means is to truly admit to yourself, admit to myself that I'm an alcoholic. When I diverted controlled substances for my own use, it was crystal clear, and certainly still is, that I am a drug addict and I can never use drugs. Prior to that, years and years ago, I drank, I felt like a, kind of a normal person. I had never had any legal issues or real serious issues with alcohol. So what happened is I got comfortable, and because I had not yet had, severe consequences from drinking, I had the false belief that I could drink socially, drink like a normal person. The reason it's different today is clearly getting a DUI. And mind you, when I got a DUI, as a pharmacist, having already been put on probation by the board, make no mistake, I understood the consequences. I'm not somebody who's here to say I didn't think the board would find that, even though it didn't happen at work, I understood that this would be taken very seriously by the board, which it has been and should be. And yet I still got a DUI. That is the definition of somebody who is an alcoholic, who continues to drink in the face of consequences. The other part of being an alcoholic is when you try to quit by yourself. When you try to quit on your own, you'll find if you're an alcoholic that you can't do it. And that is where recovery begins. Recovery begins when you realize you're suffering consequences, things that you know you shouldn't be doing and that happen to you, and that you try to quit on your own and you can't do it. And that leads to the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is to surrender to the fact that you're an alcoholic. And the first step is what leads us in recovery to reach out for help and begin a solid program of recovery.
And based on your history, can the board be assured that either diverting or use of alcohol would not be repeated if your petition for early termination were granted?
Yes. Through the program of recovery and through my experiences and all of the recovery that I've been through up until this point, I, without hesitation, know that if I use drugs or I drink alcohol, that all the consequences that I've suffered to this point will only repeat themselves. But I don't have to live in the fear of that, because recovery is about hope. That is where I live my life, in recovery. And since I've been working this program of recovery, the last 5 years of my life have been better than they've ever been before. It's more than just quitting drinking or using drugs, but rather getting the ability to manage life without those things. I have all the ability that I now to have very healthy relationships. And so it's not just about work, it's not just about myself professionally, but my life in terms of all my friendships and relationships with my children is better than it's ever been. So there's no reason for me not to continue what I'm doing, because it has been, I'm the most successful at life today than I've ever been before.
And with respect to Maximus, can you briefly let the board know what stage of Maximus you're currently in and what that entails with respect to restrictions on you at the moment?
Yeah, I'm in the transition phase, which is the final phase for Maximus. There really aren't too many restrictions. Well, the biggest thing, of course, and I'm sure you've heard this from other petitioners, is that the testing is very limiting, and in the sense that because it's randomized, it's every single day we have to call in. Every single day we have to be available to show up to this testing site. And I'm still tested 3 to 4 times a month, so that's pretty close to every week. Which is fine. But in terms of the other requirements with Maximus, there's not, I've really completed most of their significant requirements at this point.
And is it your understanding that this transition phase that you described is only permitted if you've successfully completed all of those core requirements?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
And those have all been completed?
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, do you currently have any support systems in place that you would continue to use and rely upon if your petition were granted?
Yes, of course I do. And that's a recovery community that I'm a part of.
And would you also plan to still continue in your current routines and your current activities?
They're very successful for me, so absolutely. I have every intention to continue doing exactly what I've been doing for the last 4 years, 5 years.
Does that include going to AA meetings?
Yes.
All right, and given that Maximus will potentially come to an end as of December of this year, which is not that far away, why is it important for you that this requirement end early?
Well, it has been in the last 4 years very limiting in terms of the experiences I can have with my children. Like I said, the testing, you have to make yourself available every single day and you never know when it's going to happen, to report to the testing place and be available to test. So in the past 4 years, I've been invited to my neighbor with his son, the same age as mine, his rural ranch in Wyoming for a week, and summer vacations. I've had to decline that type of trip every time. It's just not feasible in a rural area to be able to report for testing. There's been several camping trips with friends and family over the summers, quite a few actually, that I have not been able to do. The only one is kind of an anecdote, but one only trip in the last 4 years I did with my kids that was sort of a rural camping thing was we went to the Mojave Desert, and I just went for Saturday, Sunday, so one overnight. And Sunday we were going to get up and go slide down the Counsel dunes, which are fantastic. But as an example, when we got up in the morning, I had to drive an hour in order to reach cell reception to check in a test. And at that point, fortunately, that particular day I wasn't called to test, but if I was, I would have to drive back an hour, get my kid to drive another 2 hours to the closest town that would be able to provide the testing, and the whole trip would have been done. That was it. We would have to go home. So I offer that just as an example, kind of working example of what it entails. So if there are opportunities to go up, on a 3, 4, 5, 6 week long remote experience with my children, I've just said no every single time because it's just not workable. So I would like to this summer try to make my kids are 14 and 8, and I would really look forward to having these experiences this summer with them. I would hope to do so, and also because of my 14-year-old, time is going by, and missing yet another summer is time I really can't get back. He's going to be off to college pretty soon. So I really would like to recapture some of the experiences with my kids.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Jarvis, cross-examination.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Toombs, you continued to drink for approximately 1 year after your criminal conviction. Is that right?
Approximately. I can't give you a specific time, but yes.
Okay. So, in your criminal conviction, did the court not order you to abstain from alcohol as a term of probation?
I don't recall that stipulation.
So your counsel mentioned your sobriety date. What do you consider to be your sobriety date?
April 20th, 2017.
I'm sorry, was that 20th or 28th?
4/20/17.
Thank you. And then from your letters, it appears that you have a sponsor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you sponsored anybody else?
No.
Why not?
That's a good question. I think I was probably in the position to start sponsoring right up when COVID started because my meeting was gaining a regular following. Unfortunately, with COVID, it was about, March or April of 2020 that the club had to obviously shut down all in-person meetings. So that has really put, it's been difficult to interact face-to-face, obviously, with other people recovering.
Do you continue to do, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I very much intend, I think the restrictions are going to be lifted in the shortly. And I have already talked to the club and another secretary about getting it started back up, and they both agree that I can get it started back up in the near future.
So would you be intending to sponsor somebody newer in recovery in the future?
Sure, absolutely.
During COVID, were you able to continue attending AA through virtual meetings?
Yes.
Did you find challenges with your sobriety with COVID?
No, although I certainly prefer meetings in person, but there's a wealth of online meetings that are available. It's just, I really do look forward to the meetings coming back to being in person. I think there's a better connection when it's in person.
Other than just the meetings, though, you know, COVID was challenging for many, many people, whether or
Sure.
not they're in recovery. Did you find any special challenges for your recovery because of COVID, either because of lockdowns or just not being able to see people, things like that?
No. I mean, and on the subject of COVID, though, I will mention that, you know, as a frontline healthcare worker, you know, I really did at my job, I think, perform really well under some tremendous challenges that we all had. As you know, I've witnessed many people die from COVID pneumonia, and you know, it was really quite, you know, an unprecedented experience. And I'm very proud of the way that I stepped up along with all of my colleagues as frontline healthcare workers to address, and you know, and we made it through the whole experience, and I'm quite proud of that.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Petrullo, anything further on redirect?
Just one follow-up question. Mr. Toombs, you were asked whether you had sponsored anyone specifically, and my question to you is, during your time attending the Alano Club meetings, have you provided support to other attendees?
Absolutely, yes.
And in what ways have you done that?
They call me on a semi-regular basis. Obviously, at meetings, you hand out your phone number to anybody, you know, that needs help, that calls you, and they do call me, which is great. And that's the way that recovery works, is that by being of service, you have to give it away to get it. You know, and especially when they're new and they're coming in, you know, it really helps to support, you know, my own recovery as I'm helping them. I could get more into the you know, the whole reason that recovery works that way, but certainly they do reach out to me, they do call me, and I love giving support.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Jarvis, anything further on cross?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, next I'll turn it to the board for any questions. Mr. President, any questions?
No questions at this point, Your Honor.
Madam Vice President?
No questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Patel, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Ms. Butler?
No, all my questions were answered. Thank you.
Ms. Cameron Banks?
No questions.
Mr. De La Paz? Mr. De La Paz, do you have any questions? So it looks like I don't see Mr. De La Paz's camera. I'm not sure if we lost connection with him.
This is the moderator. He still shows as being logged into the meeting, but he is muted.
Mr. De La Paz is having a little technical difficulties. He's going to try to restart the computer, but he has been listening in. So we'll move on to the next member for questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sanchez, any questions?
Yeah, I see that the Maximus program, they're suggesting you could benefit by completing the program the extra year. And I wanted to ask if you see any benefit there for the last year.
Yeah, thank you for the question. At this point, I really don't. They basically, they don't require me to attend any meetings at all. I'm only supposed to call the case manager one phone call per month. It's about a 5 or 10 minute phone call at this point, and that's it. Otherwise, it's just a lot of drug testing that is very expensive and very limiting. So I respect her comment, but I would actually disagree that it's my recovery, it's my AA meetings that I go to that provide my recovery. There's nothing at this point whatsoever that Maximus does other than one phone call a month.
Yeah, and I also wanted to applaud you for, they've been saying you're 100% compliant and you've been sticking to the program, and you followed through with your end of it. And hats off to you with that, and much luck with your children.
Okay, thank you very much.
Basically it. Thank you.
Dr. Thibault, any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony and sharing your experience. I know that's not easy. I just wanted to ask about support outside of the Alano Club and your AA meetings, family, friends. Deputy Attorney General Jarvis brought up COVID. In the beginning, when we weren't yet switched over to virtual and things like that, did you have other people that you could turn to? And if something like that happened again, what other resources do you have?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's always probably the best question for people in recovery. And that is that we have to have support systems. And that is in a nutshell what it's all about. So I have a whole sober community of friends who are likewise sober, who likewise have had the same general experiences as myself. And we get a lot of support from each other. We're able to talk on the phone, text. If anybody's having kind of an issue and they need to talk about it, obviously we're always available. In fact, it is my pleasure to get phone calls and texts from other people looking for support. I truly enjoy it. It makes me feel very good. It makes me also feel very good about my own recovery. So.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's my only question.
Mr. Weiss, any questions?
I just want to say thank you for appearing before the board, Mr. Toombs. Congratulations on your recovery. I'm sure it is not easy, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'll turn back to Mr. De La Paz to see if he's been able to reconnect.
Just a reminder, you skipped over Ms. Veal, but
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Veal. Okay.
I'm fine if you want to go Mr. De La Paz first, but I just want to make sure you knew you skipped over me. You want me to go ahead and ask my questions, or do you want to check on?
Go ahead, Ms. Veal. My apologies.
Oh, no problem. Dr. Toombs, first off, congratulations on your sobriety. I think you said your sobriety date was 4/20/2017. So was the DUI happened before that? So have you had any hiccups since that 2017 date?
Absolutely not.
Fantastic. Can you explain, we've talked about that Alano Club, and I guess I didn't quite understand. It sounds like you have AA meetings and then you have the Alano Club.
Okay, it's a nonprofit community center, and that just happens to be the name of it.
Okay.
And it functions fortunately within the community as a nonprofit status. They call it Alano Club, but they I guess that it helps with the anonymity of the program, not to just put a giant Alcoholics Anonymous banner on top of it. So it has another
I see.
name that's a little more of a euphemism, I suppose. But the whole purpose of the club is recovery.
Okay, thank you. It sounded like that's what it was, but I didn't quite catch the whole thing. So I know you said quite a few times that that you no more drug abuse, but I always think of alcohol being a drug. So when you did the initial, you went through the initial PRP and graduated and all that, and never during that time did they say to you, watch out about, alcohol, maybe other drugs, other things?
Yes, that's a very good question, and that is certainly, what I asked myself too, and I think I addressed that in part by, I have not had consequences directly around alcohol the way that I had with drugs, and what happens, like I described, the first step, the surrender, is unfortunately with every person that's in recovery that you come across, they'll have the severe consequences associated with their drinking or the drug use, and then followed by attempts to quit or to modulate or regulate and so forth. And that's the pattern that leads us to the first step, which is, and that unfortunately you have to go through that to surrender. Surrender in the case of alcohol is admitting to yourself that you're an alcoholic, and then you're able to actually honestly start a program of recovery. So it just, in my journey, the DUI, when as I said, I clearly knew it was totally unacceptable, and yet it happened. That was a huge, huge wake-up call to completely surrender to the fact that I'm an alcoholic, and by having what they call 100% honest first step, start a real, true program of recovery. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you answered the question. Thank you very much. And it seems like going from drugs to alcohol. Have you received some other kind of counseling? Because it seems like there might be something that's kind of causing you to grab onto other things. And
Right.
so I just want to make sure it's not like we don't find another thing in a couple years.
Very, very good questions. Very perceptive. Yes, I've had 5 years, and I currently have quarterly psychiatric evaluations focused on recovery. I've also completed a year of individual therapy with a focus on recovery thus far, and I feel like the psychiatrist that I see currently, in conjunction with my program of recovery, gives me a pretty good handle on making sure that my mental health is stable, and if there is any problem, that I have the resources I need to take care of any issue. And you're right, no, I cannot drink any drug, any mind-altering substance, absolutely not.
Okay, very good. One last question. So you mentioned that you now have a sober community of friends. In the past, especially like the alcohol, was it your community of friends that maybe led you to alcohol or excessive use of alcohol? So did you have to get rid of all those friends and get all new ones, or is it just more change of behavior?
I think it's surrendering to the first step. It's not external things that are the problem. The problem is me. So, I think I feel like in my journey that the things that happened to me are the things that needed to happen. It's more than just my job or my pharmacist license or whatever. Really the most important thing is that the sum total of my life is gotten so much better. So I don't, ultimately I accept that all the things that I've done and all the consequences therein needed to happen for me to get to where I am today.
And once again, thank you for coming. Congratulations for your sobriety, and sounds like you've mended a lot of fences in your life. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Mr. De La Paz back. Mr. De La Paz, do you have any questions?
I had no questions at this time.
All right, thank you. And I think we've gone through the board, but I'll check to see if any members have thought of any subsequent questions. So any further questions from the board?
I just like to, this is Butler, and from the recommendation that I saw, which was dated February 4th, 2022, the organization was actually recommending an early termination, who was seeing him. So is that the last recommendation from Maximus?
So I can clarify that. That recommendation is from, let me get the exact title, but it's the Peer Support Group Facilitator. There is also a Maximus like case manager, and so they're two different people. So the Peer Support Group Facilitator did recommend that this probation be terminated early. The case manager thinks that petitioner would benefit from completing the Maximus term.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
All right, any further questions from the board? All right, hearing none. Just one point of clarification I wanted to get, because I have two different dates in my notes. Mr. Toombs, your sobriety date is at April 28 or April 20?
20.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Toombs. You're excused as a witness. Mr. Petrullo, any further evidence?
No further evidence.
All right. I'll take closing arguments. Ms. Jarvis?
Thank you, Your Honor. This office sees no risk in terminating this probation term early. Thank you.
Mr. Petrullo?
Thank you, Your Honor. Through his petition, we submit that Mr. Toombs has provided clear and convincing evidence to warrant the early termination of probation. More specifically, Mr. Toombs has demonstrated that he satisfied all criteria by way of his numerous activities following disciplinary action, both required and voluntary, the nature of the underlying offense, the fact that no patients were harmed, his successful employment history over the past 15 years without complaints and without reversion to use of any controlled substances, and with respect to alcohol, not having used it over the last 5 years, and more importantly, his documented successful rehabilitation efforts over the last 5 years. And from his peers, his reputation for truthfulness, professional ability, honesty, and integrity. And accordingly, we request that the board grant his petition for early termination of probation, as well as the requirement that he complete the Maximus program. And as you heard directly from Mr. Toombs, it is this last transition phase that has the ultimate impediment on activities he would really like to be able to pursue with his family. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. So that concludes the hearing. Mr. Petrullo and Mr. Toombs, as you may recall, I mentioned at the end of the first proceeding, the board will adjourn to closed session after hearing the remaining matters and then decide this matter among as well as the others during closed session. So a decision will not be issued today, but will rather be issued sometime in the future by mail.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you have any questions?
No questions, Your Honor. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So we're off the record in this matter. And Mr. President, shall we proceed to the third matter, or does the board wish a break?
I think we can proceed, but unless, Sheriff, do you need a little break? Yeah.
Yeah, I need to take at least a 10-minute break. I need
Okay.
to
Sounds good.
return an important call. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll take a 10-minute break. 1:55, if that works for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, Your Honor. I think let me do you need me to take attendance? I think you're going around anyway. So Eileen, do I need to take roll call?
President Ohio, I mean, if the judge is going to do it before each petitioner, I don't think you have to, but maybe we can just look to see when members come back and put on their cameras.
Got it.
Before
That
we.
sounds good. Okay, sounds good. I think just waiting on Maria then, and everyone. And in your, I think Indira, are you back? Oh, there's Maria. Just waiting on Indira.
This is the moderator. We have an attendee with their hand up. Would you like me to check and see what that is for?
KN. Sure. Yes.
Okay. All right. So KN, you should be able to unmute yourself. Oh. So attendee KN, did you have a question? Okay, I guess not.
All right. Okay. Just wanted to confirm, Indira, are you back? I don't see you on the camera, so wanted to make sure.
I apologize for the interruption. This is Ann. Just for purposes of the minutes, would you mind just taking a roll call so that we've established the quorum coming back from the break? I apologize.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Right, Maria.
Here.
Jake.
Here.
All right, Cheryl.
Here.
And Indira. Okay, Jose.
I'm here.
All right, we can hear you, Jose. Ricardo.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Ricardo. Nicole.
Here.
All right, Debbie Veal.
I'm here.
All right, Debbie. Jason Wise.
Right here.
And I am here. Indira is not back. And was she supposed to leave?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
So I'll
Your
mark
Honor,
that she's not.
Well, if she's not here, she can participate it, right? So I wanted to make sure if we can just give her a little bit of time before we continue, if that's okay.
I'm happy to do whatever the board's pleasure.
Okay. Let's just give her a couple more minutes, if that's okay. Okay, Your Honor, I'm just gonna have you start. I haven't heard back, but I don't want to delay any further, so we will get going. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So let's go ahead and go on the record. We're here on the record before the California State Board of Pharmacy, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Kyle William Park. It's agency case number 6450, OAH number 2022-030408. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter with the board. To establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Mr. President?
I'm here.
Madam Vice President?
Here.
Mr. Patel?
Here.
Ms. Butler?
Here.
Ms. Cameron Banks? Mr. De La Paz?
Here, Your Honor.
Mr. Sanchez?
Here.
Dr. Tebow?
Here.
Ms. Veal?
Here.
Mr. Weiss?
Here.
Okay, and has Ms. Cameron Banks returned? All right, let the record reflect that a quorum is present. So next, may I take the appearances of counsel, starting with the Deputy Attorney General, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honor. I am Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis, and I am appearing here on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California. My role is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. This is Steve Zeigen. I'm representing petitioner Kyle Park.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
And Mr. Zeigen, same with you. Are you familiar with the procedure for these hearings?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, very good. I didn't want to insult you by explaining something you knew, but I also didn't want to assume that you didn't know that you did know in case you didn't. And Mr. Zeigen, did you have any witnesses other than Dr. Park?
No, sir.
And do you believe there should be any additional documents other than what Ms. Jarvis will introduce?
Assuming that Ms. Jarvis does indeed, as she always does, a thorough job and includes the supplemental documents, I don't believe so, Your Honor.
Okay, and again, I recognize that's a bit of a strange question without knowing what she introduced. So after we take care of her documents, if there's some you believe are missing, certainly please let me know.
Sure, and I think just for the record, Mr. Park is seated to my right.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Jarvis, your summary statement or documents, whichever you prefer first.
Thank you, Your Honor. This matter arose via an accusation against petitioner's intern pharmacist license. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement with the board whereby his license was revoked and the revocation was stayed and his license was placed on probation for a period of 5 years. The board adopted the stipulation, which became effective on July 2nd, 2019. Petitioner has served more than 2 years of probation and is therefore eligible to petition for early termination. The causes for discipline were that from July 2017 through March of 2018, petitioner diverted promethazine with codeine, alprazolam, lorazepam, clonazepam, Robitussin with codeine, and promethazine VC with codeine for self-use. Petitioner stated that he would daily purchase an energy drink at the pharmacy where he worked and then mix the controlled substances he stole into the drink. At least once, petitioner failed to pay for the energy drink, thereby shoplifting as well. At least 2 pharmacy surveillance videos, 2 different dates, show petitioner taking a liquid controlled substance, presumably either the promethazine or the Robitussin, from the pharmacy shelf, consuming some of it, and then placing the bottle back on the pharmacy shelf. The specific causes for discipline were dishonesty, for his actions in stealing and diverting from the pharmacy, dangerous use of drugs and controlled substances, in that he used controlled substances while working and handling other controlled substances and dangerous drugs, which impaired his ability to safely practice as an intern pharmacist, violation of controlled substances statutes, in that he diverted controlled substances from the pharmacy, and then finally, administering and furnishing controlled substances to himself. Petitioner's intern pharmacist license was canceled on December 11th, 2020, and his pharmacist license was issued. On a personal note, when that was accomplished, there was a clerical error with petitioner's license in that it was issued free and clear and not on probation. I contacted petitioner to have him enter into a stipulation to rectify that error and continue the probation jurisdiction over his pharmacist license, and he was 100% compliant with that, knowing and accepting that he was still on probation despite the error, and continuing to act as though he was on probation even while the official paperwork was straightened out. With his petition, petitioner also provided a personal statement where he states that he first entered into drug dependency as a first-year pharmacy student with legitimate prescriptions for Adderall and then later Xanax to manage the side effects of the Adderall. Unfortunately, he began taking more of the medications than prescribed and then running out, which led him to the diversion. He is grateful to have been caught when he was, because he is now a better person overall and has unlocked his potential to becoming the best pharmacist he can be. Petitioner has completed a 60-day inpatient rehabilitation program, followed by 6 months of outpatient treatment, and then a year of aftercare. He also started the Maximus Pharmacist Recovery Program, PRP, prior to being required to do so through his probation terms. He has volunteered at a free clinic to give back to the community, and he participates in weekly support group and 12-step recovery meetings. In addition, with his petition, petitioner provided a letter from the counselor at the residential treatment program stating that petitioner tested negative on all drug screens and achieved a positive change towards personal responsibility and self-awareness. Another counselor states that petitioner successfully attended every group session, attends 12-step meetings, has a sponsor, tests negative for all substances, and has been successful in the program. There is also a certificate of completion of 1-year outpatient aftercare program, certificate of completion of the ethics course required by probation, I believe approximately 621 hours, although my math may not be entirely correct, of community service. There are a lot of hours. Proof of early termination of his criminal probation, proof of full compliance with the Maximus PRP program, a letter from his current counselor stating that the petitioner is making progress through the sessions and is motivated and participatory, and then extensive documented proof of AA attendance. So Exhibit 1 is the petition packet consisting of the documents just identified and including the notice of hearing and the agreement to electronic recording and a memorandum to the board. And I would ask at this time that Exhibit 1 be moved in its entirety.
Right, those documents will be marked collectively as Exhibit 1 for identification. Mr. Zeigen, any objection to 1 for all purposes?
No, Your Honor.
1 is so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I will identify the documents in Exhibit 2. Petitioner provided 11 letters of recommendation, and all 11 were verified. 1 is the same letter as the letter from the counselor that is in Exhibit 1 as well, but since it is also a letter of recommendation and was verified, it appears in both places. Another is from petitioner's supervisor at the free clinic where he volunteers, who, as of the writing of the letter in February 2021, was a 53-year pharmacist. And he states that he is continually impressed by petitioner, who is respectful, caring, and professional. Another letter is from a professor at petitioner's pharmacy school who sat on the disciplinary committee hearing for petitioner when the school contemplated, first it appears there was an academic issue, and then later that whether to, I guess, essentially expel him. He's not really clear in the letter for the conduct described in this process. But ultimately, this professor states that once petitioner became sober, he flourished. He became a more self-aware person and a much stronger pharmacy student. Petitioner's boss states that petitioner is professional with high potential, a great pharmacist, nice, helpful, and easygoing. Petitioner's boss also submitted an updated second letter stating that he is even more confident in petitioner after having worked with him for longer. So at the time of the first letter, the boss is essentially the owner of the pharmacy. There's also a letter from the supervisor, and that's why I use the different phrasing. But at the time of the first letter, he had worked with petitioner for less than a year. He has now worked with petitioner at the time of the second letter for longer than a year. So petitioner's supervisor similarly wrote two letters, the original and the updated, stating that petitioner treats everyone well, is always willing to help others, has learned from his past mistakes, and is on the path to success. He also states that petitioner has a passion for pharmacy and everything he does. Petitioner's sponsor also wrote a letter stating that petitioner is committed to making and maintaining a positive change. There is a dentist and friend of petitioner's also in recovery who states that he looks up to petitioner and believes that petitioner is healthy spiritually, physically, and emotionally. And the remaining letters are the same. They are glowing both personally and professionally, and in regards to petitioner's sobriety and his openness and willingness to discuss sobriety at any time. Additionally, in Exhibit 2 are 30.5 hours of continuing education certificates. Many of those certificates or the continuing ed classes relate to diversion or addiction issues. So at this time, I'd like to move the recommendation letters and the CE certificates as Exhibit 2.
Those documents will be marked collectively as Exhibit 2. Mr. Zeigen, any objection to 2 for all purposes?
No, Your Honor.
2 is so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, petitioner has been 100% in compliance with his probation terms. However, it is the recommendation of his Maximus clinical case manager that he would benefit from completing the Maximus program because petitioner had some trouble in the beginning accepting that he was an addict rather than just somebody who, quote, got caught. At this time, I'd like to identify and move Exhibit 3, the underlying decision and order.
Those documents will be marked collectively as 3 for identification. Mr. Zeigen, any objection to Exhibit 3 for all purposes?
Just clarification, Your Honor, as I understand Ms. Jarvis, the 3 just pertains to the underlying decision and not to the recommendation from Maximus, which we've never seen.
Correct.
That is correct. Exhibit 3
Okay.
is only the underlying decision and order.
Okay, thank you. Then there's no objection.
All right, 3 is admitted for all purposes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, I will cede the floor to petitioner.
All right, thank you. Mr. Zeigen, if you'd like to call your first witness.
Your Honor, prior to that, I'd like to give a brief opening statement. And even prior to that, I need to comment on the quality of Ms. Jarvis's presentations. I've been doing this quite a while, and the clarity and completeness with which she does the details is always impressive. And for that, both me and the petitioner are very grateful. So thank you, Ms. Jarvis. With that out of the way, if I might, good afternoon, panel members. You will hear the petition for early termination, as Ms. Jarvis indicated, from Kyle Park. As the panel is aware, Mr. Park does have the burden of establishing sufficient rehabilitation by clear and convincing evidence in order to warrant the early termination order. Clear and convincing evidence has been defined as evidence so clear as to leave no substantial doubt and as sufficiently strong to command the unhesitating assent of every reasonable mind. Pursuant to Section 4309 of the Business and Professions Code, Your Honor, the board may consider, among other factors, Mr. Park's activities since discipline was imposed, the nature of the underlying offense, and the various documented rehabilitative efforts undertaken by Mr. Park and Mr. Park's general reputation for truth and professional ability. In fact, that's why we went ahead and submitted the 3 supplemental letters to give the panel members a more current appraisal from the 3 individuals referenced by Ms. Jarvis. We submit that once the panel has reviewed the contents of Mr. Park's petition, it will find unequivocally that he has satisfied this burden, warranting the granting of the petition for early termination of probation. Mr. Park has admitted that during his pharmacy schooling, he took as a suggestion of a classmate Adderall to improve and enhance his concentration.
When Mr. Park's grades did indeed improve, he started using more than the recommended dosage. When his tolerance to the medication increased, the psychiatrist who prescribed that medication added Xanax to his regimen. Ultimately, Mr. Park diverted the benzos that Ms. Jarvis referenced, as well as the cough syrup, while working at Rite Aid, and he was caught. But rather than curse the darkness, and this is significant, when he was caught diverting, Mr. Park immediately lit a candle and took all the necessary steps to address his addiction and regain his sobriety. He admitted himself into a 60-day inpatient rehab program, followed by an additional 6-month IOP, intensive outpatient program, and a 1-year aftercare program. He voluntarily entered into the Maximus diversion program 5 months prior to the actual start of his pharmacy board probation. For almost 3 years now, the 3 years being April 4th, 2022, he has tested negative in all his random alcohol and drug screens and has been compliant with all the terms of the board and Maximus have given him. Since the start of the disciplinary action, he has completed all his necessary internship hours necessary to graduate from Western University of Health Sciences. He has volunteered at the Westminster Free Clinic and has participated in weekly support group meetings. Significantly, and this is where Ms. Jarvis's math ran askew, after he completed 536 of the required 720 community service hours as a conditional probation, the court dismissed the remaining 184 hours given his outstanding performance. The court papers reflecting this are contained in the petition. Mr. Park's gratitude at being given a second chance is clearly apparent from the tone of his narrative statement. What is also apparent is the high esteem in which his colleagues, peers in the pharmacy community, and his superiors in that same community hold Mr. Park. The letters of support, especially of that of pharmacy owner and PIC Ashraf Alfred and pharmacy manager Bijal Patel of DK Home Care Services, where Mr. Park has been employed for more than a year, speak volumes to the content of the young man's character in willingly acknowledging his disease and accepting the responsibility to overcome it and become a respected member of the pharmacy community. Significantly, given the time it has taken for this matter to be heard, Mr. Alfred and Ms. Patel, along with health group facilitator Scott Bertrand, wrote recent updates to their letters of support, which each unequivocally and with glowing comments support this petition. We submit, Your Honor, and panel members, by Mr. Park's consistent, focused, and sincere commitment to sobriety, he has earned the respect and admiration of those who know him, and we now submit that to the members of the panel as well. With your permission, Your Honor, I'd like to ask Mr. Park some questions in the form of direct examination to further enlighten the panel as to the underlying circumstances and to the various steps of his journey to this point.
First, Dr. Park, if I could have you raise your right hand, please.
Your Honor, it's Mr. Park.
Okay,
appreciate that, but Mr. will do.
Okay, Mr. Park, do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. If I could have you start by stating and spelling your full name for the record, please.
Sure, Your Honor. My name is Kyle Park, K-Y-L-E-P-A-R-K.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Zeiken, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Park, when did you first begin using Adderall?
Firstly, I'd like to address the panel and everyone here. I greatly thank your time for being here and being here for my petition. I greatly appreciate your time. I first started using Adderall my first year of pharmacy school.
And why did you think you needed it, sir?
Having had no experience in pharmacy prior to pharmacy school, I felt the need to, it was extremely difficult for me to stay current with my studies. A good friend of mine and classmate at the time recommended me that I go to a psychiatrist. He was taking prescription Adderall as well. and I got the referral from him, so I went and visited the psychiatrist.
And did the psychiatrist write your prescription for the Adderall?
Yes, he did, sir.
And when was that approximately?
That was, I believe, 2015, winter of 2015.
Okay. At some point in time, did the psychiatrist add another medication?
Yes, he did. He added Xanax.
And when was that?
He added Xanax about 3 or 4 months into me getting the prescription Adderall.
And do you know the basis for why the Xanax was prescribed?
Of course. As my doses went up for the Adderall to match my tolerance from the beginning doses of the Adderall, I began to experience side effects such as anxiety, restlessness, and insomnia. And when I described these symptoms to my psychiatrist, he decided to add on Xanax to treat those symptoms.
Now, at some point in time, Mr. Park, did you begin taking more medication of both the Adderall and the Xanax than were originally prescribed?
Yes, I did, sir.
And in order to get that medication, what did you ultimately do?
I ultimately started diverting medication from my workplace, which is Rite Aid.
Now, tell the panel members about how the promethazine with codeine became involved.
Sure. Winter of 2017, I came down with a pretty severe respiratory tract infection, which caused me to go to the urgent care. And the doctor at the time prescribed me a course of antibiotics, as well as promethazine with codeine to treat my cough. Of course, during this time was when my addiction was spiraling out of control. And I quickly realized that when I took the promethazine with codeine, one, it made me feel good. And number two, it helped me soothe out my Adderall-induced anxiety and my withdrawal symptoms from the Xanax. So much ill-advised, I began turning to the cough syrup with codeine. And when of course, the prescriber prescribed about 1 week worth of the cough syrup with codeine just to treat my cough at the time. So when I ran out of the medication, I made the ill-advised decision to divert from Rite Aid.
Now, I noticed in reviewing for the hearing your narrative statement, you didn't mention the promethazine with codeine. Was there a reason why?
Yes, in my petition, I wanted to focus on the root causes of my downfall and my drug addiction, which stemmed from the Adderall and Xanax. The codeine, the cough syrup with codeine. The more I took the Xanax and Adderall, the more I suffered from the medication-induced anxiety, and I foolishly turned to the cough syrup with codeine, but it was really secondary to those two addictions. So I wanted to focus on that root cause.
Okay. Now, as a result of getting caught doing the diverting, were there criminal charges?
Yes, I was charged with felony grand theft from the police.
And what did you ultimately plead to?
I pled to misdemeanor grand theft with 3 years of criminal probation and 720 hours of community service.
Is that conviction now expunged under 1203.4?
Yes, sir.
And was that document contained in the petition?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. When did you realize you had become addicted to the Adderall and the Xanax?
I realized I was addicted to both of those medications when I began taking more than prescribed.
And tell the panel what you've done for over the last, well, when's your sobriety date?
June 1st of 2018.
Okay, so tell the panel what you have done for almost 4 years now with regards to regaining your sobriety.
Sure. Shortly after I got investigated and got caught for diverting medications, I voluntarily admitted myself into a 60-day inpatient program over at Tarzana Treatment Centers. Immediately after graduating from that program, I admitted myself into a 6-month intensive outpatient program, which consisted of 3 days weekly and 4-hour sessions per day. After that, I admitted myself to a 1-year aftercare program, which was once weekly, 3-hour sessions. During this time, I voluntarily admitted myself into the Maximus Diversion Program, which around 5 months early from the start of my board probation, because I wanted to take the initiative to correct my actions and make amends for my past mistakes. Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and Narcotics Anonymous meetings have always been involved ever since I got caught. But after the start of my Maximus Diversion Program, it intensified in the frequency of the meetings. The first 3 months of Maximus Diversion Program, I attended meetings every single day. And then after that, it dropped to 5 meetings per week for the next year and a half. And then the following year, it was 4 times weekly requirement. And currently, I'm at 3 times weekly. I also attended professional health support group meetings twice weekly for a little over 2 years. And currently, I've been approved for 1 time weekly. I submitted to random drug testing, which ranged from 3 to 5 times monthly. I got counseling services from a substance abuse therapist approved by Maximus Diversion Program for nearly 2 years, as well as the professional ethics course that was required of me from the board probation.
Approximately how many times, if you can estimate, in the past roughly 4 years have you been drug tested?
I'm not too sure. I want to say close to 200 times.
Okay. Have you ever had a positive test?
It's besides the initial first test that came up positive for alcohol. I had a talk with the medical review officer, which I was telling him I'm very confused because my sobriety date is June 1st, and this test came up in, I believe, March of 2018 or 2019. I apologize. And we started to dig into my diet, and he suggested that one of the diets I've been taking was kombucha tea, and he suggested that could have been the cause. And after I eliminated that from my diet, I have tested negative on all exams.
Okay. Have you included all the attendance sheets from the AA meetings in the supplemental documents in the petition presented to the board?
Yes, I have, minus the 2 months of April 2020 and May 2020.
What happened to those 2 sheets?
So that was when the pandemic first began, and Maximus was adjusting to the program when they were allowing the participants to attend virtually. And during this time, as part of their adjusting process, during those 2 months for me, they required me to submit 1 meeting per page. So it ended up being, between those 2 months, about 55 additional pages of documents. And in order to keep the documents at a reasonable length, I left those out.
Okay, but you went to the meetings as required.
Absolutely.
And had you not gone to those meetings as required, would Maximus have noted that in your progress notes?
100%. Maximus also would have taken me out of school during that time, and continual failure to attend those meetings would have resulted in program termination.
Okay. Now, since your diversion from Rite Aid, you went back and completed your pharmacy school education, right?
Yes, sir.
How many internship hours did you need to get your license?
1,500 internship hours.
Okay. And where are you currently working?
DK Home Care Pharmacy.
And how long have you worked there?
About a year and a month.
And who is Bijal, Bijal Patel?
She's the supervisor at DK Home Care Pharmacy.
And she's the same person who wrote the letters of support?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who is Ashraf, Asharf Alfred?
Ashraf Alfred is the owner and the pharmacist in charge of DK Home Care Pharmacy.
And he also is the one who wrote the 2 letters in support?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Mr. Park, when you first started Maximus, did Maximus require you to be supervised at DK Home Services?
Yes. When I first became able to work, I was required 100% supervision.
And has that changed since?
Yes. So I was slowly decreased down to 25% supervision, and currently I've been decreased to 0% supervision with daily review, which is a review of my activities within 24-hour period.
And who does that review?
My worksite monitor, which is Ashraf Alfred.
Okay. Now, DK Home Services deals mostly with patients in hospice. Is that right?
Yes.
Is it fair to assume most of those patients are terminally and facing end-of-life issues?
Yes. Hospice patients are deemed to have no longer than 6 months to 1 year to live.
And how important is it for you to have compassion when dealing with these patients and their family members?
I think compassion is one of the most important things to have when dealing with the end of life. Understandingly, the families and the patients, their emotions are running extremely high during these difficult times. And for me to be able to provide comfort and patient care during these challenging times is extremely rewarding to me.
And how has your commitment to sobriety helped you in dealing with those people facing those kinds of issues?
Having dealt with the disease of addiction and the suffering from it, that could ultimately take my life as well. I have the utmost respect and empathy towards the families and the patients dealing with end of life. A huge part of recovery is helping those in need, and I truly feel blessed to be able to provide help, in that aspect as my daily job.
Now, Mr. Park, in addition to the letters from Ms. Patel and Mr. Alfred, you have numerous other letters of support, correct?
Yes, sir.
Other than my advising you to advise them to put the perjury attestation at the end of their letter, did you in any way help write their letters?
No, I did not.
Okay. Does the same apply to each and every one of their declarations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's go through the various persons so you can identify them for the record. Who is Ryan Jones?
Ryan Jones is a friend of mine, recovery friend of mine that I met through the Maximus support group. He's a physical therapist.
And who is Jane Oyama?
Jane Oyama is another recovery friend of mine whom I met through the Maximus support group program. She's the pharmacist. She's a pharmacist, and she was actually granted early termination probation a couple years ago.
And who is Emmanuel Sawaya?
Emmanuel Sawaya is a good friend of mine in recovery who I met through the Maximus Diversion program as well. He's a physician's assistant.
Who is Sebastian Saltzman?
Sebastian Saltzman is a dentist, a great friend of mine that I met through meetings and on top of that support group meetings. He's a dentist doing his residency at Tufts University in Boston, Massachusetts.
And who is Scott Bertrand?
Scott Bertrand is the support group facilitator for the Maximus support group program.
So even though he supports your position, that would seem to run contrary to what Ms. Jarvis said with regards to your program manager or whomever that was, case manager?
Yes, I guess so. Last time I spoke with her, she said she was in favor of it, but yeah, that is news to me.
Who is your case manager? What's your name?
Ann Morales.
And you told her about the petition?
I did, sir.
And she supported your efforts?
She supported it, and she said she hopes I get it.
Okay, thank you. Who is Robert Peltzman?
Dr. Peltzman is the pharmacist in charge of running the pharmacy department of the Westminster Free Clinic. He's been a pharmacist for 50 plus years.
What do you do at the Westminster Clinic?
At the clinic, I help Dr. Peltzman run the diabetes clinic, which when we're helping with patients without health insurance or homeless patients who come in who need medications or a diagnosis. So what happens is they see the prescribers and they come to the pharmacy department. I go once monthly, I go in, I do a med recon, going over all their medications to make sure they're on the right meds, they're taking the right medication at the time, at the right timing, and make sure they understand how they should be taking each medication, and what effects they should expect from them. I verify the prescriptions and I give consultations to every medication that I provide, as well as I voluntarily did some presentations for the high school volunteers who are interested in the medical field. I did a presentation on how to get into pharmacy school, how to survive in pharmacy school, as well as what different routes you can go with a PharmD degree as a pharmacist.
And so you still go there, correct?
Once monthly, yes.
How often? I mean, for how long?
On and off for about 4 years.
Okay. What did you do at the Marshall Tree Canyon as part of your community service?
At the Marshall Canyon Tree Farm, I did my community labor there. I was in charge of picking up trash, removing graffiti, and helping plant trees at various different parks in San Bernardino and LA County.
And this was the community service which was ultimately short-circuited because of your good compliance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You've maintained your CEUs as well, correct?
Yes, I have.
And those certificates are contained in your petition?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At this point, Mr. Park, I'm going to give you the floor. Please tell the panel why you believe you no longer need the security blanket of testing and probation.
Okay. On March 2nd of 2018, I was investigated by the Rite Aid Asset Protection Managers, where I came clean to all my wrongdoings of diverting meds for self-use. Truthfully, I saw my life and my future go right down the gutter, and I thought my life was over. Fast forward to my first day in rehab, inpatient rehab. I went directly into my assigned room and laid on my assigned bed and looked up at the ceiling in silence. And I asked myself, how did I let myself get to this point? I thought about all the people that are disappointed who believed in me, knowing how much better my parents raised me to be. And I just thought about how I just threw my future away. And right then and there, I admitted to myself that I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, and all the above. That in order to swim out of this, I have to be free of any mind-altering substances and fully surrender myself to recovery. And that's what I did. I fully believe I no longer need the testing and probation terms to live a life of honesty, sobriety, and integrity. I'm no longer that foolish man that made those incomprehensible mistakes in 2018 who put the public in danger. Today, I know where I have been, and I know where I'm headed to. I remember the pain and suffering from my rock bottom days like it was yesterday, and it's been engraved into my mind as somewhere that I never wish to be at again. I'm happy to say that I married the love of my life, my wonderful wife, Pauline, on February 20th of 2021. She's also a pharmacist, and she's been walking side by side with me in my journey to recovery, and she's been my rock. My parents, who supported me and believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, they've always been around, and they've been a helping hand. With the tools that I've gained in recovery, along with the strong support system that I have all around me, I feel very strong in my recovery. I feel very safe in my recovery that I won't ever relapse.
How important is being a pharmacist to you, sir?
Being a pharmacist Pharmacist means everything to me right now. It's something that I worked towards my whole life for. And just the rewarding feeling that I get when I make a recommendation that benefits the patient in the littlest way. It truly makes me feel happy inside. It lets me know that I'm in the right field, and that's the field of pharmacy.
This is the worst part, huh?
Yeah, sorry.
Making sure you said everything you want to say.
Sorry. Recovery has given me a gift, a second chance at life that I never planned to take for granted. Recovery has taught me to be a better son to my parents, a better husband to my wife, and just a better person overall. And I'm willing to continually challenge myself to be a better person and humbly make amends when I'm in the wrong. And more specifically, it's taught me to be a better pharmacist, a more compassionate pharmacist, and more caring pharmacist as I look at my profession in a completely new light. Panel members, I stand in front of you today as a reformed individual who has learned many, many life lessons from my past mistakes, and I vow to never repeat those past mistakes. I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that I am a positive asset to society, and I'll continue to make positive contributions in the healthcare world. And I hope I get the opportunity to make you guys proud when I'm granted early termination probation. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, there's nothing I can add to that, Your Honor, particularly since I didn't help him write it. So we would submit the matter at this point, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Jarvis, cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Park, your sobriety date is June 1st, 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So at this point, do you consider yourself an addict?
Yes, absolutely.
And do you intend to abstain from alcohol and other drugs for the rest of your life?
Absolutely. I believe that once you're addicted to one substance, I must be free of all mind-altering substances or I'll collapse straight back to where I was, and I don't plan on doing that.
Did you, in fact, have some trouble accepting that you were an addict when you entered the Maximus PRP?
No, absolutely not. I became aware that I'm an addict the first day I went into rehab.
At the time that you entered Maximus, had you already done the 60-day inpatient treatment program? What was the scheduling for that?
I went in on June 1st, 2018 and came out on August 1st, 2018. And then directly after, 2018. And directly after that, I submitted myself into a 6-month intensive outpatient program.
And then where in that scheduling did you join Maximus PRP?
Maximus, I believe I called to join in February of 2019.
You said in your testimony that your criminal conviction was expunged under 1203.4 and that those documents were included in your petition packet, but I don't see them, actually. I have
Actually,
the
I
early
think I might have
termination.
I apologize. The expungement came a little later. It took a little more time. I don't think I submitted those documents. I apologize.
Okay. So your criminal probation was terminated early, and then you were later expunged after you submitted this petition.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Okay. No other questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Zeigen, anything further on redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, next I'll turn it to the board for questions. Mr. President, any questions?
Hi, at this point, no questions. I just want to congratulate your sobriety, and thank you to Dave Jarvis and you, the attorney Zeigen, as well as the petitioner for excellent presentations. I think everything I wanted to ask was asked by you, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Vice President, any questions?
Yes, just a quick question. Dr. Park, thank you for your presentation and for your candor. I really do appreciate that. I just had one question about, you graduated from pharmacy school in June of 2020. Congratulations, that's a big event.
So much.
And it looks like maybe you had a little bit of difficulty obtaining employment as a pharmacist for several months. Can maybe you explain that, or did I miss something?
Sure.
No, just wait till the question.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so, after I graduated from in June 2020, it actually took me a little while to get scheduled for my CPJE as all the dates were getting taken. So it gave me a little extra time to study, and I just focused on my studies. And I ended up taking the CPJE in December. And shortly after that, I got a job. about a
Great,
month.
thank you. Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Patel, any questions?
I just wanted to congratulate Dr. Park on his sobriety. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Ms. Butler?
I would also like to congratulate Dr. Park on his sobriety.
Ms. Cameron Banks, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. De La Paz?
No questions from me, Your Honor, at this time.
Mr. Sanchez?
No questions.
Dr. Tebow?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Park. Thank you so much for testifying and congrats on your sobriety. My question was just about what are you hoping to do if your probation is ended early? What restrictions are you looking specifically to be removed, and how will that change your practice of pharmacy?
Sure. I've always wanted to do a residency, and I know that, as someone on probation, you're still technically allowed to do a residency, but it's extremely difficult, trying to beat out other candidates under probationary terms. I went through a residency program process, and I felt that I did very well. And one of the residency directors reached out to me and said, I feel like you're a very, very good candidate, but with the restrictions, we don't feel too comfortable going forward. And he just sent me an email thanking me for my efforts. And to be honest, it felt good that he reached out to me, but it broke my heart at the same time because I have much that I want to do as a pharmacist, and moving forward, I want to learn more and continue to challenge myself as well. Also, I want to look into doing collaborative practice agreement and eventually work towards being an advanced practice pharmacist as well. And I think I need a clear license to do that as well. So.
Great, thank you. No other questions.
Ms. Veal, any questions?
Yes, I do. So what would you consider, and actually I have a question. So you are a PharmD, but you want to be called Mr. Park. I'm just curious why you chose not to take on your, the title you've earned.
Oh no, I'm happy to take on Dr. Park, 100%. Okay. I think Mr. Zayat was just making a little joke.
Okay.
No, you know what, Ms. Beal, I got to be honest with you. I've called him Mr. Park from the first time we've been together, and he never corrected me. So it's all my fault. I'm representing Dr. Park.
All right. I just know a lot of pharmacists, of which I'm one. We handle that a little bit differently, each one of us. Anyway, your support system. What is your support system now?
My support system has a wide range. My support group system that I make through the Maximum Support Group program is like my second family. Any issues and concerns we have for one another, we're one phone call away. As well as my sponsor, who's had 36 years of sobriety. He's one phone call away at any time. My wife, my parents, as well as all my childhood friends. I've completely disclosed my whole story to them, and they respect me for gaining my sobriety, and they respect my sobriety as well. So anytime that I'm around anything like that, they are in consideration of my sobriety, and they respect me in that aspect.
And are you at the same time also, have you participated in any kind of counseling or mental health checkups?
Yes. So for almost 2 years, I went to a substance abuse therapist approved by Maximus, and I obtained counseling services from her, identifying triggers, reinventing relapse prevention tools, and just how to go about each day when I feel frustrated or run across any issues, how to have good coping mechanisms.
And did you say that if we were to grant your petition for early termination, that you would stop going to Maximus? Did you say that?
I would like to, yes.
And so explain to me why you would want to stop using Maximus, since you actually just said it was one of your support systems or the people associated with it?
Oh no, I meant the program in general. You know, the AA groups, the support group that I have, they're family for life. You know, and I'll continue to attend those 12-step recovery meetings on a daily basis, or if not 5 times weekly at the minimum. That's just part of who I am now, and you know, I've devoted my life to that lifestyle. I say Maximus because Maximus has very, very constraining restrictions on my daily life. For example, my number one reasoning of wanting to discontinue Maximus is for family emergencies. Maximus requires me to obtain permission 3 weeks prior to leaving my designated living area for 24 hours or longer. And currently, with my father's declining health with his heart condition, he's been getting a lot of chest pain and going to the emergency room more frequently than I like to see. And it's hard for me to monitor him because they happen at random times, you know, sometimes in the middle of the night, and I'm unable to be there for him and monitor him, and it truly does break my heart. On top of that, it's very costly. You know, the drug testing, it's about 3 to 5 times monthly, and if it's a urine test, it's about $100 per test, and it's less frequent. But with hair and blood tests, it's more costly, as well as the Maximus monthly fees and the support group fees, monthly fees as well. It just adds up, and it's extremely hard for me to save up for a future.
So the Maximus support group is one of your support systems.
Mm-hmm.
And if you leave Maximus, I think you just said that the support group is part of that package.
Right.
Would you still, I mean, how would you still use them as your support system if you're disconnected from them?
Right. They're always one phone call away. You know, there are people that I talk to on a daily basis, you know, even without the support groups. Sebastian Saltzman is a really good friend of mine. We keep in contact probably every other day, you know, and other people in that support group know that I'm one phone call away as well. The meeting aspect in my family, I attend no matter what.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your sobriety.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right, Mr. Weiss, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Hi, Dr. Park. Really appreciate you appearing before the board today. I am curious, before the introduction of Adderall and subsequently Xanax, have there been any substance abuse issues looking back in hindsight that you were experiencing that you hadn't identified?
Not specifically, no. You know, I went to college and I had my fair share of, you know, drinking, but it wasn't to the point where, you know, it was spiraling out of control. You know, I think when I became accessible, the medication became accessible to me on a daily basis. My body just started to get more dependent on it, and I was justifying because with myself, because you know I was prescribed, so it's okay, and ultimately it wasn't okay, you know, and it was just a fast route down to a downward spiral. And I realized that having gone through all this, that I have to be free of all mind-altering substances, and that's including alcohol as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Congratulations on your sobriety and nuptials.
Thank you so much.
All right, I believe I've gone through each of the board members, but just in case any members have subsequently thought of any additional questions, any further questions from the board? All right, hearing none, thank you very much, Dr. Park. You're excused as a witness. And Mr. Zeigen, I believe you're done presenting your case. Is that correct?
I'd just like to make a closing statement to the panel, Your Honor. It wouldn't take more than 3 or 4 minutes.
Of course. First, we'll give Ms. Jarvis her chance to do her closing.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did receive confirmation through board staff checking the Los Angeles County Superior Court website. The petitioner's conviction was dismissed on July 22nd, 2021, pursuant to Penal Code Section 1203.4. So I just wanted to clarify that for the board. And other than that, I have no recommendation, and I leave this up to the judgment of the board. Thank you.
Mr. Zeigen, your closing whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's clear, panel members, Mr. Park has been as committed and determined to regain and maintain his sobriety as he has been in reaching and maintaining a successful career in pharmacy. counsel in my position will always extol the virtues of their own clients because that's our job. But I'd ask the panel during the course of their deliberations to look at the additional comments made to the investigator by the authors of the letters of support that we previously referenced. And they are really significant. They are the truest barometer of whether someone has truly been successful in his recovery. With regards to the question posed by either Ms. or Dr. Veal, the letter from Amber Legault, Legault, that was Mr. Park's therapist. And she says, and I'm just paraphrasing now, he's done a really great job in identifying triggers and has all the appropriate coping skills. That's at page 4 of the investigator's report. Robert Peltzman, the pharmacist for more than 50 years, who is the pharmacist at the free clinic, says, and this is crucial, I cannot imagine anyone being more honest and forthright than Mr. Park, who actually now trains new employees at his free clinic. That's page 5. With respect to Dr. Thibault's question, Ashraf Alfred says he cannot wait for Mr. Park's probation to end so he can work at another of Mr. Alfred's pharmacies and not have so many restrictions on him. Mr. Alfred says Mr. Park is ready to work with an unrestricted license. Page 5. Bijal Patel, who's the supervisor where Dr. Park works, says he is a good worker who never refuses to help with additional tasks, is very knowledgeable and deserves another chance. Scott Bertrand, who is the group facilitator for Maximus, says he's seen a big positive change in growth in Mr. Park, who he said is great to have in his group. Panel members, aren't these exactly the kinds of comments you want to see in every petition for early termination? Comments which show contrition, acceptance, sincerity, and honesty, integrity, and a love for one's profession, having been given a second chance at success. Folks, I submit Dr. Park is everything you want to see in a probationer, and at this point in time has earned the privilege to have his probation terminated early. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That concludes this matter. And Mr. Zeigen and Dr. Park, as you may have heard me here with regard to the other matters, the board will adjourn to closed session after hearing all the petition matters on the agenda and decide your matter. So a decision will not be issued today, but will be issued at a later date by mail.
Thank
all
you,
right?
Your Honor. Thank you, panel members. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much. And we are off the record with regard to this matter. Mr. President, shall we proceed to the next matter, or does the board wish to take a short break?
I think we can proceed. Just confirm, Cheryl, are you okay?
I'd like 5-minute break.
Okay, sounds good. We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 2:57.